Good afternoon, and welcome to Broadband Breakfast Live Online for Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. And welcome to the final Broadband Breakfast Live Online for 2024. My name is Drew Clark. I'm CEO of Broadband Breakfast, and happy to welcome you to the year-end edition of Broadband Breakfast Live Online. Here at Broadband Breakfast, we believe in better broadband, better lives. We care about the infrastructure and about the way it impacts everyone's lives. And that's what we do every day. We report the news on high capacity internet and the issues that it impacts and impact it. And we build a community around better broadband, better lives. We publish this content on the site. You can view a lot of our content for free, but we invite you to get unlimited access to become a part of the Broadband Breakfast Club, our premium membership service. And we also do this free event, Broadband Breakfast Live Online, every Wednesday for free at 12 noon Eastern Time. I guess I can't say every Wednesday because we're not doing it next Wednesday, Christmas Day, and the next Wednesday, New Year's Day. So this will be the last one for 2024. And it's a special one because we're actually going to be kicking off the 12 days of broadband. And just give me a moment and I'll come back to that in a second. But it's basically something we've now done. This is the third year running where we publish the 12 top broadband stories for the year, obviously the year 2024. And we're going to talk about what those stories are and, the reporting that has gone into coverage of it. We'll be back next year, January 8th, with another Broadband Breakfast Live Online. And, look and follow Broadband Breakfast for more details about each of those. I do want to thank the sponsors of Broadband Breakfast. We could not do this free programming that we do without their support. Our sponsors include Utopia Fiber, Comcast, Ookla, Wesco, Coos Systems, the Institute for Local Self-Reliance's Community Broadband Networks Initiative, the California Emerging Technology Fund, G Fiber, Broadband Now, CostQuest, ACA Connects, NCTA, the Internet and Television Association, and Gaia. Thank you to Gaia for recently joining as a sponsor of Broadband Breakfast. We also just come off the in-person conference 6 days ago, Broadband in the Trump administration. The videos of that event are now available on Broadband Breakfast. So we encourage you to become a member of the Broadband Breakfast Club so you can watch and see those videos. Well, with that, let's go ahead and open up our view to all of our panelists for today. Again, this is a special Broadband Breakfast because this is the staff of Broadband Breakfast, or I should say the editorial staff of Broadband Breakfast. And I'm going to introduce them briefly, but mostly I'm going to turn it to them to introduce themselves and a little bit about their background. And as promised, we're going to talk about the 12 days of broadband. We just published the first day of broadband today, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But let's go to our fellow reporters and editors to talk about themselves. And they, of course, are reporter Jake Neenan, reporter Jericho Casper, reporter who's actually just concluded his time with us, but we're excited to have him on because he did such a great job during his time with us as a reporter, Ari Bertenthal, and our managing editor, Ted Hearn. So let's turn it over to you, Jake, to tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your role at Broadband Breakfast.
Sure. I apologize for the poor timing there if you can hear the sirens directly outside my window. But yeah, my name's Jake Neenan. I've been a reporter here for about a year and a half, which it's wild that that time has passed so quickly. I still feel like I'm getting my feet wet in a lot of ways. But yeah, I finished J school in 2023, so this is my first full-time gig out of that. But before this, I did some reporting on state prison systems. I was freelancing some investigative projects with the Boston Globe and New York Focus. So yeah, that's kind of my deal. I have kind of stumbled, backwards. I wasn't really like familiar with telecom or broadband at all before this, but I've become pretty, pretty like passionate and interested about the industry. I think it's yeah, it's a cool space to be in now, especially. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jake, we'll ask more about yourself and the things you cover soon, but let's turn it over to Jericho Casper. And let me just switch the view here. So give me one quick moment to do that. Okay, great.
Okay.
Replacing spotlight. Go ahead, Jericho, floor is
Happy to
yours.
be here. Yes, my name is Jericho Casper. I have been working at Broadband Breakfast for a year now. Prior to this, I was working for the Institute for Local Self-Reliance as a researcher and reporter, reporting on locally owned networks and trying to fight I believe it's 16 states now that hold the preemption laws against cities and counties owning their own broadband networks. So in my tenure there, we were able to remove 3 of those laws with the help of my team and our advocacy work. And I went to the University of Virginia where I studied media, but I focused in telecom policy and law. So you could say I'm a big old telecom nerd. Happy to be here today. And yeah, was excited to get the conversation started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jericho, and thanks for all the work you've done. Obviously in the last year, but you've done a little bit of work before for Broadband Breakfast, and I think it's kind of exciting to see the continued development and the continued work that you did previously and that you've done in the past year since you've been back full time as a reporter. Let's change our view to Ari Bertenthal. Ari, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming to us from, and your experience at Broadband Breakfast.
Well, hello everybody. My name is Ari Bertenthal. I am coming at you today from California, so the good afternoon doesn't quite apply to me yet. Um, I just concluded my time at Broadband Breakfast. I was an intern there in this past quarter, coming from the UC system, of course, per my California residence. Um, and I am a student at the University of California, Santa Barbara. I study sociology, and I'm very passionate about the application of sociology into broadband for, i.e., digital equity. So that's kind of my deal. I've been this is my first real reporting gig, and I have greatly enjoyed it so far.
Awesome. Very cool. Ari, I'm going to ask you one question before we turn it over. Just what was like one of the coolest things that you did in your experience at Broadband Breakfast? One or two of those coolest things.
Oh, well, maybe the coolest thing that we did was the chairwoman's dinner this past year. Wonderful to see so many very influential people in the broadband space, and also just very cool to meet a lot of a lot of interesting people and learn more about what their roles are in the broadband space, and also just what the future looks like for them in the coming presidency.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Ted Hearn, tell us about yourself.
Right. Yeah, Drew, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I am Ted Hearn, I'm the managing editor. And but first, I'd just like to remind everybody of my safe harbor statement. Some of the things I'm going to talk about today are subject to risk and uncertainty, and they may or may not come to pass. The other thing is my standards have really changed, Drew. Before, I provided reasonable answers and commentary, but now, after Loper Bright, count on me to provide the very best answers I can think of. As you can tell, I always wanted to be a pioneer in the field of administrative law humor. So what's my job like? Well, my job is really easy because Jericho, Jake, and Ari are 400 hitters. And, like Ted Williams, the last man to bat higher than 400 in Major League Baseball, you don't tell 400 hitters how to swing the bat. I would say that 2024 was a really exciting year in terms of regulation and litigation. And now, we're in a presidential transition. That's always very exciting because there's so many announcements and so many people associate personnel with policy. And then we're going to move into the first 100 days of the new Trump administration, and that'll be an exciting time. But I would say in general terms, and I dwell on this a lot, that I feel very fortunate to be part of a generation that can remember a non-internet world. I think these innovation waves hit me a lot harder and are a lot more exciting to someone like me than they are for people who, really can't imagine a world without an iPhone. So the things that are happening for them are more incremental than they are for me, because I'm seeing these changes as being, much bigger than probably they really are, but still pretty exciting. So I'll stop there, and I look forward to a fun conversation.
Awesome. No, this is great. And like I said, I so appreciate being able to visit with all of you and with our audience that sees this and will see it, to talk a little bit about, what it's like at Broadband Breakfast on the reporting side, and also the 12 days of broadband. Okay, so I'm going to say a little bit more about just 30 seconds about myself, and then the 12 days of broadband. So I founded Broadband Breakfast in 2008. And like literally just after the iPhone was founded, right? So we've kind of grown up with that technology and the technological changes. Broadband was obviously an issue then; it is an issue still, and yet there has been progress. Undeniably, there are faster broadband speeds. That's great. Not everyone has it. That's obviously what a lot of the things we write about every day are about, getting it to everyone. And not everyone kind of knows everything about how to use it. Now, you don't need to know everything about how to use it, but there's a training component that's very important. A digital inclusion, digital literacy, digital equity piece that is important in the broadband ecosystem. So that was probably more than 30 seconds. What I want to say now is welcome to the 12 days of broadband. I'm going to read you like the first 2 days, and then I'm going to jump to the 12th day. Okay. So what we're doing is we're publishing stories every day until January 2nd, Monday to Friday, on a topic in broadband. And so we just published our first one on the first day of broadband. My true love sent to me an extra-planetary life-promoting tech billionaire set on electing a president. And yes, you guessed it, it is Elon Musk. The story is live on Broadband Breakfast, our person of the year. On the second day of broadband, my true love sent to me 23 million served by the Affordable Connectivity Program, and an extra-planetary life-promoting tech billionaire set on electing a president. You get the drift, right? Now, rather than reading all 12 days, I'm going to jump to the 12th day so that you can know what the 12 days of broadband are. But you have to come back to the site every day until January 2nd to read the story about that day. So on the 12th day of broadband, my true love sent to me 12 senators and representatives signing the Andreessen Horowitz Little Tech Agenda. On the 11th day of broadband, my true love sent to me nearly 11 years to complete the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, complete with defaulted locations. On the 10th day of broadband, my true love sent to me 100 broadband-related rulemakings at the FCC relying on Chevron deference. Obviously, we are a little liberal on this, 10, 100. You get the point, right? On the 9th day of broadband, my true love sent to me $90 billion in global telecom mergers and acquisition deal value in 2024. On the 8th day of broadband, my true love sent to me $8 billion in annual universal service funds. On the 7th day of broadband, my true love sent to me 70 billion kilowatt hours of electricity annually consumed by 2,700 data centers in the United States. On the 6th day of broadband, my true love sent to me 6 years of service at the FCC by Commissioner and Chairman designate Brendan Carr. On the 5th day of broadband, my true love sent to me 5,500 active low Earth orbit satellites in low Earth orbit. On the 4th day of broadband, my true love sent to me 42.5 billion in broadband equity, access, and deployment funds already allocated. On the 3rd day of broadband, my true love sent to me 3rd year without Federal Communications Commission having spectrum auction authority. On the 2nd day of broadband, my true love sent to me 23 million served by the Affordable Connectivity Program. And on the 1st day of broadband, my true love sent to me, and extraplanetary life promoting tech billionaire set on electing a president. So that's the preview. Now, of those 12 stories, tell us a little bit about your thoughts on those, okay? You know, reporters, Jake and Jericho, who have been working on these, editor Ted, and Ari, although you're not, writing for these stories, you wrote a lot of stories over, the last 6 months of 2024, and so you certainly saw these 12 topics in play. So, who wants to go first?
Yeah, I don't mind taking a stab at it. So I
Please.
think looking back, see this year as like the year that affordable broadband really got spotlighted as a huge issue, as one of the main barriers that's preventing people from getting connected. 53% of people have reported struggling to pay for their internet bills on top of their other utilities this year. And one in six Americans was relying on the ACP to pay for that bill, and as that went away, we saw nearly more than half of people either downgraded or dropped their service. Um, and so that really became in the spotlight this year. Not only is the infrastructure an issue, but we have to be able to help people to get connected to that. Like people cannot financially afford that. Um, and so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. We just saw the New York law get the Supreme Court decided they're not going to challenge the New York ABA Affordable Broadband Act that requires providers in the state to offer, $20 and $15 plans respectively for different service offerings to low-income folks. And that is really setting a precedent, I think, going into 2025. We haven't seen or heard Donald Trump talk about affordable broadband, but I think ISPs should, maybe be shaking in their boots a little bit, that other states might follow suit. This is something that states are going to take the reins on. So that was a huge thing that came about this year. The federal government tried to save the ACP, but it seemed more like a political show. If I am to be honest, lots of the attempts came in April, May, June, July, after the ACP had already expired. So I think cities and states are going to have to step up, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Thanks. Other thoughts on affordable broadband, for example?
The one thing I would add is that it'll be interesting to see if JD Vance gets involved in trying to revive the ACP. He was probably the most prominent Republican in the Senate who spoke in support of the program.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, and we obviously reported on it the very first day JD Vance was, named as the vice presidential nominee. That was the lead of our story, an original introductory on the Republican side of the ACP reintroduction. And he's said many times that he supports that. So, and this would be a program that would have helped his family in Ohio, growing up. So that's something that we're going to be watching very, very closely. Yeah. What are some other stories either on affordable broadband or others of these 12 days that the reporters want to speak to?
Well, I might just take a quick second to mention the Universal Service Fund as kind of related to affordable broadband. That's been something that's of course been huge in the news recently. The Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of its funding mechanism is something that's I think been very interesting and very I guess poignant in the news recently. And I think that's very related to the affordable broadband situation that's going on and will be kind of ongoing in the coming administration. Something else that is relevant to the USF that I think is going to be very exciting in the coming year is the contribution factor, which of course I just talked a little bit about. I mean, it's expected to rise to what 37.4% in the first quarter of 2025. And there's a lot of questions going on about whether or not this is a sustainable Funding mechanism. I mean, it's an ever shrinking contribution base with mixed with an ever increasing contribution requirement. Um, and I just think that'll be a really interesting conundrum for the affordable broadband debate going on into the coming administration.
You're muted, Drew. Sorry.
Well, it happens to everyone. Thank you for raising that, Ari. I think that this is a great point about, the affordable broadband piece of the ACP and the contributions piece of the Universal Service Fund. USF obviously has kind of payouts too. As part of the program, it's a money in and money out system. And this was very amply discussed at Broadband of the Trump administration, the conference 6 days ago. We had a panel that kind of paired these two issues together. We do have two separate stories on this, and this is one topic that's been in every one of the three thus far 12 days of broadband that we've covered, because they are sort of out there, and in my view, they're very connected, right? I mean, I think you can't talk about ACP without also talking about USF, but other people have different views. Other people have had the argument, hey, let's just get ACP renewed, re-upped, but it didn't get done, right? And it didn't get done in large part because where's the money going to come from unless you have a source you can tap it into? Legislators were hesitant to go for it.
Right. I'd say that, one thing is if Congress takes on universal service reform, will ACP be a component of that? There's that, and then there's the battle over whether big tech has to contribute to the fund.
Yeah, yeah. At the conference last Thursday, sort of the simple way to frame this is, the current system is not sustainable. There are three alternative approaches. One approach, and we had panelists on all three of these points of view. One approach is to put it in general appropriations. That was former FCC Commissioner Harold Hirschgoth-Roth's view, that it just needs to be a general appropriation out of taxes. And this whole system of running through USAC, the Universal Service Administrative Company, is not, in his view, constitutional. He's a supporter of that lawsuit that is now at the Supreme Court. The second view is to kind of broaden the base. Instead of just beyond telecom revenues, it should be on broadband revenues, assessed on broadband. And that would lower that 37% contribution factor to more like 3 or 4 or 5%, right? And some people support that, and some don't. And then the third view, which is kind of, still a little unclear, like who's for this and who's for the other broadening the base approach, but taxing big tech, which is kind of a euphemism for getting edge providers, not broadband providers, not telecom providers, not broadband providers, but get an edge provider like a Netflix, right? Or a Google, those who are making use of the internet, obviously, to pay somehow, some way. Rosalind Layton, also on that panel, definitely endorsed this view, and she kind of laid out arguments for that. So you can watch more about that. But those are kind of the three perspectives out there, and which one I still wouldn't bet on any one of those three over the other.
Let me just toss out one other funding source. I believe Blair Levin and Larry Downs proposed taxing online sports betting.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I think you wrote a story about that, right, Jake?
Yeah, that was a good essay. But yeah, it's such a complicated it's such a complicated thing, because lawmakers have been working on modernizing the fund for more than a year and a half now. Like, what was it, like May 2023 or something? So like it's a difficult thing even under like the current structure of it, and depending on how the Supreme Court case shakes out, it could become significantly more complicated. So yeah, I agree that is probably the thing that I'm going to be is going to be taking up a lot of my mental space going into the next year.
What about some of the other days of broadband? There are 12 of them, but besides ACP and USF, what day would any of the three of you reporters like to highlight as of interest, right?
I'll throw in BEAD.
Please jump in. What?
Anyone want to talk about BEAD?
BEAD. Yes, BEAD. Let's talk about BEAD.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Ted. I didn't mean to
No,
cut you off.
no, I was going to say, I'll go last.
Okay. But yeah, there has been a lot of talk about what the future of BEAD rules, I guess, are going to look like under the Trump administration. But Ted Cruz, incoming chair of the Senate Commerce Committee, has said explicitly they're going to quote unquote review some parts of it that Republicans have consistently disliked, mainly the preference for fiber, although there are other things included in that list, and has said there are quote unquote major changes on the way for the program. It's not clear right now necessarily what specifically those might be. And, on the other hand, states have been, working for a super long time and are, continuing to put forward, some of the earlier states are putting forward like their final proposal, their like funding plans under the program, under like the current rules. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, and what the how significantly the program gets shaken up, if that is a thing that's going to happen.
Can you just, let me ask a little bit more, Jake, can you just speak to like how far in the progress, you would say, whether by like just as a whole, like they're 70% of the way there, or 60% or 80% of the way, or by states? And you've been doing this tracker that is available, in which we literally have every state when they have opened their windows for particular applications. Can you just speak to both those things there, Jake?
Yeah. I don't, it'd be tough to give a percentage, I guess, but I think at least 5 states are done with their like solicitation of grant applications, and that can involve some negotiating after the fact, so it doesn't necessarily mean that they've got their entire corpus of applicants to work with. But and I think there are 3 final proposals out. A lot of states most states I think are done with their challenge process, the the like challenging the government coverage data that is ultimately determines which locations are eligible. So yeah, I forget. I think it's something like 15 or 16 states are currently taking or no, that includes some of the ones that are done, but 15 or 16 states have started taking applications under like the current BEAD rules. So it's getting to the point where it would be more disruptive if one were to change the like process under which projects were actually selected, which is why I think that that conflict will be interesting to watch. But I don't know if that gives you like a
That's great. No, that's a great answer. Jericho or Ted, what thoughts do you have about the BEAD process and the way it's rolled out, or what might happen? And we still have a month and 2 days until the inauguration. So what is the Biden administration going to be able to do in that time period?
I feel like there are just so many like little sub issues within this larger issue of like the Republican criticism of BEAD. For example, like, there's going to be crazy permitting hurdles. We hear about states that take, years to get, rights of way permits. And I think Massachusetts came under fire for that this year. Um, and yeah, and also with the Starlink, I think something that isn't really spoken about enough is, if that's something that's an alternative technology that will be relied on, there's a huge barrier for many people in accessing the router. The cost of the routers and modems are about like $600, and then the monthly fee is 110 on top of that. So that's about $30 more expensive than your average plan. Um, and I'm actually curious if anyone on the panel knows if any states are like going to be subsidizing the modems for people, or if the low cost option would kind of kick in there. I just think within the actual rolling out, there's going to be, even if we stick to the plan, this is potentially going to be like a years long, effort in continuation.
Yeah, the permitting stuff is going to be such a huge such a huge thing going, into the next year and beyond. It's not a thing that gets talked about super much, but it's like an absolutely dizzying amount of work that goes into, both the like local municipal permits and the NEPA stuff. Yeah, so that's gonna become a much bigger issue in the next year, I think. Not to be in the business of predicting things, but
Yeah, Ari, you gonna answer Jericho's question?
Yeah, I was actually about to chime in. Some states have actually already begun subsidizing Starlink hardware, Maine included. And also I remember during the onset of the hurricane season, or directly after Hurricanes Helene and Milton, I recall writing a story about Starlink subsidies, I guess, being awarded to victims of those hurricanes. And so those have already been in the works slightly now. Now, will those apply to bead? That is where it gets the water gets a little bit muddy, in my opinion. Is that there are more extraneous circumstances that I think have warranted Starlink subsidies in the past. Um, though I'm not entirely confident that that is going to I guess proceed further subsidies for bead recipients.
I mean,
Good.
some states definitely are doing are doing satellite stuff. I don't think Louisiana released like they were still hammering out the deal, and they didn't say whether it was Starlink or Kuiper, but they were like, some number of thousand locations are going to be satellite in Louisiana, and Nevada released their final proposal yesterday, I think, and they actually went with Kuiper for their satellite locations, but yeah, I don't think Delaware, the only other state that released theirs, they're strictly Verizon and I think Comcast. Sorry if that's wrong, but they're strictly wireline in Delaware, but they're smaller and had more money. But yeah, they'll definitely be even if the rules stay how they are, because you can do non-fiber stuff if it's too expensive, or if you can't get interest from a fiber provider for a certain location. So they'll especially in like some of the bigger states where people are super remote, there'll be some Starlink in the mix.
More broadly, I mean, let me just ask about kind of the move, if we can call it that, and the move away from fiber. I mean, 2 years ago in our 12 days of broadband, the number one or the first, it's not, these aren't ordered by importance. They're just tied to some number that it relates to the 12 days of broadband. But we did have one about fiber. And fiber being like the technology that had kind of risen to preeminence in the way the Biden administration, privileged, if you will, fiber over wireless and clearly satellite, including LEO satellite. Has that definitively changed? Like, again, for all the reporters and for the editor, Ted, what do you see on the ground in terms of openness to not go with fiber? Has it just become so gapingly obvious that fiber is not going to be, it's going to be too expensive to serve everyone that needs to be served? What are some thoughts that you hear as you interact with people on fiber and wireless and satellite?
Yeah, well, there's also the New Mexico example, which we don't have to get into right now. But look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an economist. I'm just an average bear who's been watching this sector for a long time. And my observation about BEAD is that it's risky, and it's getting riskier by the day, because these BEAD projects are going to take place in a competitive market. And I don't know if the risk is high or the risk is low, but I think it is a risk that the success of these BEAD projects could be jeopardized by satellite competition, and 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 then if and then the question is, does NTIA repurpose money from fiber to satellite? Whether that happens, how fast it happens, I'm not sure. But again, it would be the continuation of a trend rather than the rather than the initiation of one.
Well, boy, the questions are really pouring in. Thank you for that. I'm going to try to cherry pick some of these questions. One that just came in from Sam Lipson says, commenting on the state of BABA, Build America, Buy America, in light of the increasing sway against Chinese goods. What BABA didn't make our list, right? It had in previous years, and I'm not sure necessarily why, right? But does anyone want to comment on Build America, Buy America, as well as some of the, like maybe the Rip and Replace program, another kind of program in the news? We certainly followed these closely. What do you all think about the status of these, and maybe how they might change in the Trump administration?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say in talking to some heads of different trade associations, they said the BABA requirements like weren't as big of an issue with BEAD as some of the other ones. So that was something I was happy about. But I feel like this year there was just a large trend of like localization of, certain industries. So like semiconductors and fiber optic and um I'm sorry, Drew, what was your question?
It was about the role of Build America, Buy America rules in the Trump administration, and also the Rip and Replace program, kind of two issues that sort
Yeah,
of
I think it's
have
gonna
been.
just continue to take off as it has like trended this year. Like I've seen that as a huge trend that we're in every sector we are trying to remove like this foreign technology. So, there was bills passed to ban DJI drones this year and ban there was a lot of different things. Any sort of, there's obviously like the TikTok thing comes into play that the
Yeah.
TikTok so all of I see that that really took off this year, and I imagine under the next administration it's going to just continue that way. I think it's actually good for the US economy. Like we've been slacking on a lot of these things, so I'm happy to see like semiconductors and fiber being built in the US, and creating those jobs, and it's really a positive thing in my mind.
Well, this kind of brings back Brendan Carr, who is commissioner of the FCC for 6 years now, and will be the chairman January 20th. What do we make of Brendan Carr's attitude towards these topics, particularly the Rip and Replace program, TikTok? He's been a real critic of. Any thoughts about the tone that soon-to-be Chairman Carr has set on these issues regarding competition with China?
Well, if I could just piggyback off what Jericho said there for a second, the emphasis that Carr and Trump as well have had on national security is really coming to light here. I think that Trump has been a very well-known isolationist, to put it, I guess, blatantly. Um, and I think the thoughts that Carr has had as that have been complemented, I guess, by the rest of the Trump administration, just kind of go to highlight that American economic dominance is very important to them, and by relocating certain industries such as the semiconductor industry to the United States, they are thus able to revitalize the American economy.
Mhm.
Now that's been a huge talking point for these people for a very long time. Um, and that's essentially what I see coming to play here with those ideas.
But isn't it the case that the Democrats have been just as hawkish on China as the Republicans have been, at least for the last 5 years, 6 years? Does that reduce its salience as a political issue? Anyone? Ted, what do you think?
I was going to sort of steer away from that issue and sort of talk about some of the broader themes going on with Carr. I don't see the China issue uh, being that big.
Okay.
I think it will depend upon how the TikTok issue plays out. But the things, I think the things we should really focus on is, what is Carr going to do on broadband? What's he going to do on Section 230? And he also is going to make a big statement, in my view, in the media regulation department, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. we have more questions here. One is about the BEAD, and Michael Dunn asks, one aspect of BEAD that could have a significant impact is the number of ISPs that do not participate because of the far-reaching post-award obligations. What do we feel can be done, if anything, at this stage to lighten the awardee burden? Does anyone want to speak to that issue?
Well, I would be curious to hear what Jake has to say because, especially, let's take Louisiana for example. Jake, was there anything coming out of Louisiana that suggested that the subgrantees are expecting difficulties like described in the question?
It's definitely not. I mean, not specifically in Louisiana. I think they said that they had decent participation among their applicants. But yeah, I mean, it's a thing that companies will talk about, and they'll say if we don't like the rules in the state, we're not gonna play ball. Yeah, I guess we need to see more more final proposals come out before it's really clear if that's like making a big impact in states. I know. I mean, I think it's interesting in Delaware that I think I'm like 90% sure it was Comcast. It was Verizon they awarded all of their money to, and then the other provider, I think it's Comcast. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong, but it was another like wireline provider who agreed to serve a number of locations under BEAD rules without financial support, which effectively blocks it is a move effectively blocking the state from funding another provider to scoop up those areas, because the NTIA is pushing states to find coverage for every eligible location. So even if companies don't love the rules, I think there is an incentive if it's near your footprint, if there are eligible locations near your footprint to that would maybe make someone more inclined to participate because you don't want someone else scooping those up. But yeah, I guess it's too early to know whether that's going to be a big issue for states, at least for me. I don't know.
We have two questions
Yeah.
here about digital equity. One is, can anyone speculate on the successful awarding and funding of the Digital Equity Act funds that we are waiting on now, specifically the competitive grants? And the questioner, Mike Lynch, references objections raised by Senator Ted Cruz. And then we had another question about, on the same point exactly. Ted Cruz is, I'm not sure if it's been confirmed, he's likely to be the chair of the Senate Commerce Committee. Has that been confirmed yet? But the point being is that let's just talk a minute about that committee, about Ted Cruz, about this issue, but also other issues that are in the purview of the Senate Commerce Committee. Who wants to tackle that question first?
You can take a stab at it. Go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
No, the headline, as far as I know, is that Ted Cruz says number one on his agenda is spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah, I am really hoping that I don't think that it will be a big issue that he'll actually try and stop the competitive grants from going out. I mean, he made the argument that it's somehow unaligned with the Fifth Amendment, because it's favoring racial minority. I just don't think that argument stands up because the digital equity programs are actually going to benefit white Americans more than minorities. When you actually look at the statistics of state plans, like when you look at, where's the level of white Americans versus Black and Hispanic, like the level, oftentimes white Americans, the aging population is like far behind on these issues. So depending on the state, obviously it's different state to state, but like I just don't think his argument will hold up in general. That's my view.
Thanks.
Good
Thanks
point.
for weighing in on that.
Yeah.
What about other aspects of it? Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
No, is anyone asking questions about Carr? I think we really need to give some time about, the Brendan Carr chairmanship that, is about to unfold before us, but I don't want to jump ahead of any questions.
We're not getting any questions from questioners on Zoom about Carr, but if you want to chime in on.
Yep. I just a couple observations on Carr. The question is, what can he do with a 2-2 commission after Jessica Rosenworcel leaves on January 20th? There's that. How long is it going to take for him to get a third Republican? So there's that. And then there's the other question about, what's the range of his options in the post-Chevron deference Loper-Bright world created by the Supreme Court last June. And the question is, he's going to have to deal with net neutrality, digital discrimination, and he's going to have to work with Congress. Senator Klobuchar raised this at the Broadband Breakfast event last Thursday about how Congress is really going to have to figure out how to write new laws that conform with the Loper-Bright standard. The other thing about Carr is that I think he signaled this. He's been pretty clear about this, that he is going to launch a rulemaking on Section 230. And I think it's going to come out this way, that he's going to propose rules that if big tech's moderation practices are not done in good faith, they will lose Section 230 protections. That's where I think he's going to come down. Now, how that all cashes out judicially, I don't know. And the last thing I would say about Brendan Carr is that I think before he's done, there's a good chance, not a guarantee, this is my surmise, that you're going to see a pretty serious license revocation proceeding against one of the stations owned by ABC, CBS, or NBC over the lack of content diversity, which is one of the three pillars of broadcasters' public interest standard.
Interesting. We'll be watching for that. I mean, among our 12 days of broadband, we have kind of obviously multiple themes, like the Brendan Carr chairmanship. Brendan Carr in turn has said a lot of things about the FCC's denial of Rural Digital Opportunity Fund applications by Elon Musk's SpaceX's Starlink. One of our days, the fifth day, is the 5,500 active satellites currently orbiting in low Earth orbit. About 5,000 of those are SpaceX's Starlink satellites. Project Kuiper is apparently gearing up to get going, but they still don't have any active subscribers, to my knowledge. And we've got a question here from Michael Pitch. He points out opinionatedly that Elon's pushing Starlink's average 65 megabits per second downloads is forever sentencing rural citizens to second-class broadband and requiring massive government subsidies for himself. This follows the pattern of how he built Tesla, SpaceX, government taxpayer monies. Okay, so that's Michael Pitch's perspective. But I mean, let's just talk a minute or two about Elon Musk, about how he's changed the debate, if he has changed the debate on broadband-related topics, particularly with regard to LEOs, but maybe also has he changed the debate about, X, right? I mean, X used to be criticized for not being neutral, right? Now it's clearly not neutral at all, right? Has that changed the debate around discussions on Section 230? What do our reporters and editors think about this?
I mean, sorry, I'm kind of bringing it back to the car stuff, but I would say I kind of think the the more, because I feel like the like 230 stuff would probably be challenged in court, and I don't know, I think the more like immediate and material stuff is probably gonna be related to the consumer protection efforts from the Rosenworcel FCC, and we're either trying to roll those back somehow, or not enforcing them or something like that. And and even stuff like making making it easier to deploy like wireless equipment and stuff like that. Like I think the PI FCC had some rulemakings on that, but I I don't know, to me that seems like an equally important thing to be watching for, in addition to the things that he talks about a lot.
Anyone else? We just got a raft of great questions from many of our active members here. Let me just check through these. Seth White asks Jericho, Do you have any initial recommendations for municipalities who are unable to create a community network but are still caught dealing with an affordability problem with ISPs?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, in the states where it's restricted, it's, they can't even partner, so that's not a solution. Is that correct too?
I mean, I do think it's noteworthy that one of the states with the most restrictive anti-muni laws, Utah, has been the home of a very successful municipality building an open access model, Utopia Fiber, around a partnership. That is to say, the last mile provider is a private sector person or entity, whereas the municipality is the wholesaler of the network. That's just a point worth bearing on. I think Seth's kind of question here is about the question of affordability and municipalities, and
Right.
how municipalities struggle with that, either by building themselves or partnering with others, or maybe just subsidizing through state-based or are there city-based affordability programs that you've discovered, Jericho?
Yeah, there was some cities that used their COVID relief funding like once the ACP ended to kind of like make sure those residents stayed connected. So Atlanta was one that I believe they had $10 broadband for seniors and $18 broadband for low income folks. And then other than that, I just would say like start building a network for your government and keep fighting those laws, and one day you'll be able to partner with an operator, and you'll have the upper hand in setting the regulations for your own network. So I don't know if that's kind of like a hopeful look, but you could
Well, yeah.
start
Thanks
building for
for
yourself and think that maybe one day this can turn into a citywide project.
Thanks for weighing in with that perspective. Mike Dunn asks, how long should it really take to re-engineer the Universal Service Fund in order to fund an ACP replacement? It's untenable, in his opinion, to fund a replacement ACP via appropriations. Okay, well, that's obviously the viewpoint of not of one commissioner. And by the way, I think Ted Cruz has weighed in, and Ajit Pai as well, on appropriations, right? So that kind of has gained some steam lately. But how long will it take? Boy, I mean, probably at least to Congress, maybe two Congresses. What do you think, Ted or Jay?
My answer is quickly and really fast, given the role profile of the Senate, A, and B, John Thune's going to be the majority leader.
Okay. Well, that's a different perspective, but I appreciate that one. We have a question from Seth that's specifically directed to you, Ted. Seth Wyatt, do you think NBC's reorganizing of MSNBC is part of preemptively avoiding the FTC target you mentioned? Do you want to?
Oh, that would just be speculation. But thanks for the question. I don't know the answer, and I was just going to say, Drew, in the waning minutes here, unless you want to go to a different question, I was just going to say, looking ahead in terms of trends that I kind of see out there, we touched on this a little bit. Will big tech's hunger for cheap energy lead to the revival of the nuclear power industry? A big issue that really puts big tech potentially in a huge battle with environmentalists and others. And I'm looking forward to the trade group that big tech creates to support reviving nuclear energy in this country or advancing it. And maybe they'll call that trade group the Tobacco Institute to show they have a sense of humor. The other thing is protecting subsea cables. There's that. And I think that once we get the digital divide issue behind us, not so much the affordability issue that Jericho highlights, but the availability issue, I think that the next big cause or wave is going to be network security. I mean, when you look what happened in North Carolina and all these places after the hurricanes in September, a lot of people, I'm sure, are asking themselves, why the heck are we losing our internet when we need it the most? And I think it's going to take a long time, but I think there's going to be an effort to bury as much of the infrastructure as possible to safeguard it from natural disasters. The last kind of fun observation I'd like to make, Drew, is that I really get a kick out of going to conferences and seeing pictures of the audience in a conference. And everybody is huddled in these pictures. 90% of the people are huddled over their laptops or looking at their phones. And I don't know about you, but when I'm doing that, I'm not paying attention to anything else. And so I'm really wondering if they're even there. And so why are they even there? And the second thing is I've seen pictures of panels where even the panelists who are not speaking are looking at their phones. So anyway, there's all that. And
I want to
thanks for the
raise
time.
I want to raise one last topic. We still have about 4 or 5 more minutes for the group, and then I'm going to give everyone a chance to offer some final thoughts about what you're most looking forward to in broadband in 2025. But the final topic, I'm going to just kind of join the 10th day and the 11th and the 9th day. The 10th day being 100 broadband related rulemakings at the FCC relying on the Chevron Doctrine. By the way, I counted, I looked, and 2, about 90 billion in global telecom M&A deal valuation in 2024. This is kind of, and it's been really like end loaded this year. Does anyone want to speak about these 2 developments we haven't really talked about yet? Like what's going on here? A, what's going to happen without Chevron in terms of all these rulemakings in the FCC? And B, like, why are we having so many merger and acquisitions right now? What is this forebode? Jake, Jericho, Ari, you want to weigh in on either of these topics?
Well, sure. Yeah, I can definitely talk about Chevron a little bit. I mean, it's interesting to see what's going to happen without Chevron deference. I mean, ultimately, all these decisions are going to be left up to people who, might not have the same training basis or work experience that, kind of one would expect would be necessary to make some of these important decisions. Um, so I think that's going to be very interesting. I think that as well, Chevron deference has already gone out the window, but as we move into the new presidency, with that being the reality, it's going to be an interesting dynamic between Congress and the FCC regarding rulemaking at any level.
Let me just ask Ari a question. Ari, before you joined Broadband Breakfast, did you ever think you'd be able to answer a question about the Chevron Doctrine?
Not in the slightest. I'll be honest with you. Before I joined Broadband Breakfast, I had a slight concept of what Chevron was, but
Really? Okay.
I had heard of it before, but I
Oh,
had no real basis of understanding, and now
are,
I do.
are
So,
you are you entertaining your classmates in the cafeteria with your knowledge about the Chevron Doctrine?
oh, you should see them. They nothing but laughs over here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
M&A, anyone want to comment on that?
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything super insightful, but the people seem to think that that is going to continue next year. That there'll be more smaller fiber providers scooped up by some of the bigger ISPs. Sorry, my kids
Yeah.
getting in the frame.
Yeah.
All right,
Jericho?
let's
I just wanted to circle back. I know we got 2 minutes. I want to circle back on Chevron. I think it's not retrospective, so everything's going to be prospective. But so I don't expect the commission's going to be relying on Chevron for anything. But the Loper Bright situation is basically if the FCC doesn't come up with the best reading of the law, which brings us back to my admin law humor point at the top of the program, the FCC is going to lose. But as Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh said in September, Loper Bright was a course correction, but don't overread Loper Bright. If Congress hands broad authorization to the FCC, then Loper Bright will not be a hurdle.
Yeah. All right, we're going to close out. We're going to go in the same order we started. What one thing are you looking forward to about broadband in the year 2025? Jake?
Gosh, I don't know. It's so it's so like nerdy, I guess. But I sincerely am looking forward to reading the final BEAD proposals that, as they continue to trickle out. So I guess that's my.
You have 56 state broadband officers who are very happy right now, Jake. So
I will. I do read all of them. So I'll be if you put any jokes in there, I'll see it.
all right, Jericho.
Yeah, I think I'm excited for like the rollout of BEAD to continue, the workforce development principles, the local, the BABA requirements, getting people online, getting people skilled in digital training, and yeah, just helping people unlock the digital economy that have been locked out for, however long. So I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to continue. Honestly, I think it will continue on a similar thread that it has. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be the optimist today.
Well, and let's not forget, that there's a purpose behind these programs, and BEAD is purpose is really to serve people that have not been served. So we definitely need to take a moment to recognize that, and even as we kind of report on and maybe critically report on things, we certainly want to give acknowledgement to those important efforts. Ari, what are you looking forward to in 2025 in broadband?
Well, I am very, very excited about the three digital equity programs under the Digital Equity Act. I'm very excited to see where those go. I mean, specifically the competitive grant program. Ted Cruz is not a big fan of that one, but I think it's going to have a really interesting future in 2025. I mean, we reported in October that they received 700 applications representing $6.5 billion in funding requests for the $1.25 billion program. Um, and I'm just very excited to see um, what form digital equity takes in the coming year.
Cool.
Great.
Uh,
Drew, I want to thank Apple CEO Tim Cook and his team in Cupertino for the most recent software upgrade on the iPhone that now allows the Voice Memos app to create transcripts almost within seconds. And if more innovations are coming like that in 2024, I'm going to be really excited.
Yeah. Well, the thing I'm most looking forward to, I guess it's a little bit covered in the data centers and the kind of insatiable demand for electricity, but these are not data centers, but internet exchange points, and getting more of them and deeper, getting every state an IXP. That's what I'm most looking forward to, because what it does is it cuts the costs for the backhaul costs and the connectivity costs. And that's an important part of bringing costs down for broadband. So that will have to be our last word today. We will see you all in the year 2025. Thank you for being here. On behalf of Broadband Breakfast, have a wonderful holiday and a happy new year. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Phil.